Hello everybody. Now my goal in this video series is to show you how you can use Kotlin Multiplatform technology to build a simple movie application for Android and iOS. You can see on my screen I've got on the right side my Android device and on the left side an iOS simulator. I'm going to give you a quick look of what you can expect to create at the end of this video series. Now let me take you first of all on the Android side. You can see that we are fetching movie data. Now on this home screen we are just displaying popular movies retrieved over internet. You can scroll, also click on one item. This will bring you to a detail screen. We're not going to implement like this play functionality here, sorry. Now I've got also here on the iOS side the same functionality. You need just to click on one item to see the details of the film. Alright, I want to mention a couple of prerequisites here. The first of all is that assuming you are in somehow familiar with Kotlin, because this is not going to be like a complete beginner video tutorial. So you should know, for example, why we're using dependency injection, and I also assume that you know how the clean architecture and all that stuffs work. And the other thing is that as per Apple requirement, you need Xcode, like with a Macintosh operating system, to run your iOS application. This has nothing to do with Kotlin multi-platform technology. It's just Apple. Alright, now before we get started, I want to take a little bit of time to talk about the data provider. We're going to use the API from the moviedatabase.org. I'll provide this link in the video description. So in order for you to be granted an API key, you'll need to create a free account. It is really simple. And once you have created your account, you need to come up here on your profile and click on settings. Scroll a little bit, and at your left side you should see this API key. You need to click that. It will bring you on this page here. So if you haven't a key, they will like give you a link and ask you questions, so they will grant you a key. I've got here my API key. This is an example of how you could make an API request. And the next thing is to come up and click on this link here. This is the API documentation. I've got it already opened. So I would suggest you to take a little bit of time and understand how this API works and what kind of data are retrieved here. We'll use just two endpoints here. This one to get the details about a movie. Here is the base URL, as you can see, and we're also going to use this get popular endpoint, just to get popular movies and display them in our home screen. Now to keep things simple, we're just going to retrieve a few fields here. We'll not retrieve the page since we are doing the pagination ourselves. We'll need the poster path. We'll need the overview. We'll also retrieve the release date, the ID, and the title. I think that's all we're going to retrieve. Just to keep things simple. Alright guys, I've got here my Android Studio opened and we are ready to start creating our project. Now the first thing that you will need to do, if you haven't already, is to install the Kotlin Multiplatform plugin. And for that you need to come up here under plugins and you need to type Kotlin M. This should suggest you this Kotlin Multiplatform Mobile plugin. You need to click on the install button. That's going to download the plugin and install it in your Android Studio. Once the installation is done, you'll need to restart your Android Studio in order for you to find the Kotlin Mobile Multiplatform Mobile template during the project creation. After that, you will come up here inside Project tab, and you need to click on New Project. Let me expand this a little bit. So, yeah, you need to scroll down until you find this template here, the Kotlin Multi-Platform app. You need to click there and click Next. So here you will need to set up the name, the package, as well as the location of your project. So I'm going to name this as movies, like so. The package is good for me, and also leave the default location. After that, you need to click Next. Now on this second page of configuration, you would like to pay more attention to the dependency manager. And as you can see here, it says CocoaPod Dependency Manager, Kotlin Multi-Platform use blah 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 blah, requires a Ruby gem installation. So this basically means that it requires you to do some extra steps in order for you to use the CocoaPod Dependency Manager for our KMM application. So I won't cover that extra steps. That's why I recommend that you use this. The regular framework, as it says here, doesn't require any third-party tools. Now, if that's not selected by default, you'll need to come up here and change that from CocoaPod to regular framework. Now you can leave these names, and if this is like checked by default, you need also to uncheck this. And after that, you will need to click Finish. Now this is going to, of course, take a little bit of time to build all and put all the files together. Now I'm going to skip the video until the build is done. Alright guys, now the build is done, and the first thing that you would like to do is to come up here, change the view from Android to project. Now this way we've got here all the files and directories of our project listed. As you can see, a Kotlin multi-platform project is a multi-module project. We've got here 3 modules. The first one is this Android app. As I got here, this is just a normal Android application. You can see that, if you're an Android developer, you would recognize this project structure over here. We've got also iOS app. This is, as you can read, an Xcode project. Here is the project structure. If you are an Apple developer, you would recognize this as well. Now the third one, the shared module, is the one that normally should be new to you if this is the first time you work with Kotlin multi-platform application. I'm going to expand this. As you can see, we've got here some kind of other modules. Now on one hand we have this one over here, Android main, and then common main, and then iOS main. These are called source sets. Now as per the documentation, a source set is just a collection of Kotlin code files along with their resources and the dependencies. The first thing I would like you to do is to come here under the shared module and click here on the build.gradle.kts file. You can see that I've got here a couple of things added also, just to go quickly. And I've got here the Kotlin X serialization. Inside this plugin, you need to add this Kotlin X serialization plugin with its version. This is just for data serialization and deserialization. Now if you scroll a little bit down, you'll find this source set block. inside this source set, you'll find we've got common main. Now inside this common main, I've added a couple of dependency here. I'll provide you the link to my GitHub repository. That way you can grab these dependencies so that we get started quickly. You can see I've added here Keto dependencies, Kotlin coroutines, as well as the coin dependency. Now after that, that's not all. You need to scroll down until you find this Android main block. Probably you won't find like with this by getting and dependencies already set up. You will find probably this val declaration has Android main. You need to add all this. Also for the iOS, you would like to add this dependency here. You can see this is Keto client. This internally will create an HTTP client engine specific for the iOS platform, here as well for the Android client of Keto. That will do almost the same thing. Now once you have added these dependencies, you would click here on the sync. Okay, click here sync. That is going to build Gradle. Now this may take also a little bit of time, so I may skip the video as well. Okay, I think that the build is done. I'm going to close this. Come up here and expand my source set. To go like quickly, I'm going to delete these files because we don't need them. You can hold command and select each one. That way you can delete them. The following problems were found. Yeah, delete anyway. Okay, so I think here we are ready to get started. Oops. I'm going first of all to create a data directory for our data layer. I will name this data. Now inside this data, I will create a new directory. I will name that remote. I'll create here new Kotlin class file, and I will name this movie remote. This will be a data class, and hit enter. Now in here, I will declare all the feed that I would like to retrieve from the remote API. On one hand, that is the ID, which will be of type integer. I will also retrieve the title, type string. I'll retrieve the overview, which will be the description. I would like also to retrieve the poster image of type string, and lastly the release date. Now if you read the documentation, like, you should have seen that this release date here is not spelled like with this with the camel case. Instead, they've written it with a lower d. Now I would like a way to tell the Kotlin X in JSON serialization that, okay, you're going to read this feed like this, but we want you, when deserializing data, to return this, to use the d, like in camel case. So for that, we need to add one annotation here, and that is serial name. So in here we're going to write a string value that tells here is how you will read the feed from the remote data source. I'll write here release date. We need to do the same thing here for the poster image. I'll add here serial name, serial name and poster path. Oops, poster path, like so. I need also to add here the annotation serializable. Now we are also going to retrieve a list of data, and for that I need one more model here that represents a list of this remote movie here, and for that I will come up here under remote and create new Kotlin class file, and I will name that movies response, like so. Oh, not responses. This is also going to be a data class, and this will contain one feed, and that is results, which will be a list of movie remotes, like so. This is correct. If you looked at the get popular endpoint, they return an array called result, which will contain all the movies. Now we don't need to add any annotation for this. That's good. Now next thing is to create our Ktor API. I'll create an abstract class to set up the HTTP client. Come up here under remote, create a new Kotlin class file, and I will name this Ktor API. You can hit enter here. Oops, I forgot one thing. I should also add an annotation here, the serializable, like so. Alright, so this is going to be an internal abstract class, Ktor API. Now I've added this internal keyword for like optimizing on the iOS side, because this will tell the native Kotlin compiler that it should not, of course, these internals prevent from exposing this to other modules, but also the internal keyword will limit the number of Objective-C adapters that the native Kotlin compiler has to generate. I'll need also to add this here as internal, because all these classes are not going to be exposed to the external world. So I'll come out here. I need to paste two things here. On one hand, the base URL and the API key. After that, I'm going to declare the client, the HTTP client, and initialize it with HTTP client. Use this. We've got here an HTTP client configuration, and for the configuration, I'm going to install the content negotiation as JSON configuration. In here, I will call the JSON from content negotiation config, and I will need the JSON builder. Let me see, this first one over here. And for the configuration, I would say ignore unknown keys to true. Use alternative names equals false. Now this is like a basic setup of HTTP client. Let me close this. Now next I'll need to create an extension method to the request builder, HTTP request builder. That's where we can like set up some of the commons URL configuration. I'll come up down here and I will create a new function. It will be an extension function to the HTTP request builder. I will call this path URL. Now this is going to take a path. Like for each endpoint, it should like provide the, like for getting like popular movies, we'll provide here movie/popular, and for getting a single movie, we'll provide here for the path movie/the movie ID. Now inside here, I will set up like I will call the URL request, like the URL builder here function. The URL builder. In here I will first of all set the base URL by calling the take from method, and writing inside here the base URL that I have declared on top of this file. After that, I would like to set up the path, this one here. And since you are using the third version of the moviedatabase.org, I'll also add this path over here, as well as the path that we received. I'll add one parameter that is common to everybody, and that is the API key. API key. I'll add API key over here. So, right, I think this is done for our Cater API. The next thing that I would like to create is a movie service. And I'll come up here under the remote, create a new Kotlin class file, and I will name that movie service. It will be a normal class. Let me add the internal keyword as well. This will extend the Cater API abstract class that we have created. Cater API like so. Oops, sorry. So in here, I'm going to define two suspend method to call to use the client from the Cater API that we have created to retrieve data. Actually, one hand I will have this suspend function get movies, which will retrieve all the movies from the popular endpoint. We'd like to pass here a page as integer, since you are going to do pagination, and I will initialize this to 1 if there is no page given, and I will call the client get method, this the second one over here. The get method is also a suspend function. That's the reason why we needed to declare this with suspend keyword. So in here I will call the path URL, because this, as you can see, gives us an HTTP request builder. So we can call the extension function that we have created earlier and set here our endpoint, which is popular slash movie slash popular, and also this should return this should return our movies response. Now I'd like also to have here one parameter. The parameter is, what am I writing? Parameter, and I'll have that as page, passing in the page that we received, and finally call the body method to convert the response that we receive into this movies resp. Now the next one is a method to get a single movie. I'll call this get movie. This need a movie ID as integer also. It should return movie remote single movie, and I will call client dot get. Where is the method? Now right over here, and I will set the path URL to movie slash I need string interpolation, and pass in the movie ID. And after that, I'll call the body method to convert that to movie remote. Now the next thing that we'd like to create here is a remote data source. Now a remote data source is a class that will be responsible first of all to provide the remote data to the repository, as well as switching our network call to a background thread. I would like to have some sort of control on which background thread I'm going to execute my network call. Now, as Android developer, we like to use the dispatcher IO for all the reasons that you guys know, and we don't need to do any sort of compromise. So we don't need to do any sort of compromises here. Now, what we need is a way to tell KMM that, hey, okay, I know that I'm writing shared code, I'm inside a shared module, but still I don't need to do any sort of compromises here. I would like when we are under the Android platform, I want you to use this dispatcher IO. And whenever we're not in Android platform, yeah, I'll provide you something else that you can use. Thanks to the expect actual mechanism of Kotlin Multiplatform, that's possible. And that's the main reason that you see here we've got Android main as well as iOS main. So whenever you need to use some platform specific API, you just need to use the expect actual mechanism to tell KMM that, okay, here is what I would like to use for Android. I don't want you to do, to use things that I don't need here. Now I'll come up here and close this remote, close the data, and inside our package I'm going to create a new directory. I will call this util, and inside this util I'll create a new Kotlin class file, and I'm going to name this dispatcher. Select file. Now in here I will create an internal interface called dispatcher. This will set up all the dispatcher that I would like to use for my networking. So I'd like to use an IO dispatcher for when I'm using Android, and I would like to use a default dispatcher when we are using the iOS platform. So I'll declare here a val IO that should be a coroutine dispatcher like so. Now to tell KMM that, hey, I need this dispatcher to be platform specific, you'll need to use the expect actual mechanism. I'll declare here an internal function, internal expect function. Pay attention to this expect keyword here because this is what doing all the magic. Let me finish writing this. Fun provide dispatcher. This should return a dispatcher, the one that I have created. As you can see, KMM is already complaining, saying that, okay, now you have told me that I need to go and inside each platform and find a way to provide this dispatcher here, but you haven't created it anywhere. So next we'd like here to provide a dispatcher for when we are using Android, and for that you will, let me close this. That was not a good explanation. And you need to come up here inside Android main. In our movie package, we need to create a directory or package, and we're going to call that util. This needs to match, like this path here needs to match for the KMM to find this dispatcher. You need also to give like the same path here. So I'm going to create a new file and I'll give it the same name as dispatcher. I will select file, and in here I'll create an internal class called Android dispatcher like so. This will implement the dispatcher interface that we've created, and then provide the IO coroutine, which is going to be dispatchers, using the dispatchers from Kotlin coroutines.io for Android. And in here I'll declare an internal actual, now not expect but actual function provide dispatcher, and should return the dispatcher as an Android dispatcher like so. We need to do the same thing here under iOS main. Let me expand this, create a directory, new directory. I'm going to call, okay, util as well. and in here I'll create a new Kotlin class file named dispatcher. I'll create here an internal class called iOS dispatcher. This will implement the dispatcher and provide the IO dispatcher as dispatchers dot. You can see that there's no IO there's no IO suggested here, because the Kotlin multi-platform knows that, hey, here we're now going to use any Android platform API code. Now what we'd like to use here is this default coroutine dispatcher whenever we are inside our iOS platform. Alright, so I will need also to provide an internal actual function, provide dispatcher. You need to name it the same way, using the same signature, just replacing the expect by the actual. It needs to return the dispatcher as iOS dispatcher here. Now you can see that, yeah, it's happy now, saying, okay, now I know how to provide this dispatcher right here. Let me close this dispatcher creation here. I hope that you understood what I've tried to explain you here through this example of using a specific dispatcher when using Android or iOS. Now the next thing that we'd like to create here, let me first of all close this, the Android and iOS main. I will come inside our data package, inside remote, create a new Kotlin class file, and I will name this remote data source. It will be a class. Alright, let me also add the internal keyword over here, like so. This will need an instance of our movie service. I'm going to add this here, API service, movie service, as well as what else? Yeah, the dispatcher we have created so far. Well, dispatcher, I didn't even have the val keyword here. We didn't have that. So like I said, this remote data source here is responsible for providing the remote data to the repository, as well as switching the network call to a different thread using the dispatcher we need to get here as dependency. Now have here a suspend function get. Should this be a suspend function? Yeah. Suspend function get movies with a page integer. Now this will call the with context from Kotlin coroutines, and I will use dispatcher.io, and from in here I will call my API service to ask for movies, passing in the page as page. Next is a method to get a single movie, get movie. Oh, what am I writing? This need a movie ID, and it will switch it to an IO context, and then call API service dot get single movie. This one passing in our movie ID as movie ID. Now the next thing I would like to do is to create a domain layer. So I will create here a new directory. Actually, I'll name this domain, and inside my domain I would like to create a new directory called model. Inside the model is where we're going to create our movie, movie data class that represent a movie instance that we'd like to show in our UI. So we're going to have here pretty much the same feed as in our remote movie, except that this class here won't have any kind of annotation and will not be related to any sort of data manipulation. Now I'll have here an ID of type integer. We'll need a title of type string. I will name this not as overview but as description. Yeah. So I will also need to have here what again, image URL. Yeah, I will change also the name here because this is much more descriptive. And lastly, I will have here a release date, which will be of type string. Now, this is the kind of data that we'll receive from our remote API. And we'll need to, instead in our UI, we'll use this movie data class here. Now we need a way to pass the data from the data layer to the domain layer. For that, we use what we call mappers, which are just extension functions that helps mapping data from one layer to another. So I will come up here inside my data package, close the remote. I'm going to create a new directory called util. Yeah, let me also name this one utils. I will create a new file here, Kotlin class file, and I will name this mappers, where I'm going to declare extensions functions to map data from the remote from the data layer to the domain layer. So in here I will create our first mapper, and the only one that we are going to use in this course because this is not a big project. So I'll create here an internal function code like so. Call this to movie. This will return movie from our domain layer. Need just to create a new movie. For the ID, we're going to take the ID. For the title, you're also going to take the title. For the description, you will need to provide me the overview. For the image URL, now comes one thing. If you read the documentation, you would see that the poster image that we are retrieving here is not the entire image URL, but just the last part of the image URL. So you will need here to create an helper method. I will name this like private function get image URL, provided that we got here a poster image. Get image URL actually. Now this will return a URL starting with HTTPS, and this is going to be the image dot the movie database dot org slash t slash p slash, here we need to precise equality and then attach the poster image we have received here. Now I need to call this from here and get image URL, passing in the poster image, and for the release date we just need to pass in the release date. So next we'd like to come up here inside our domain. I'm going to create a new directory called repository. I'll create a repository, a movie repository interface, movie repository, oops, and this should be an interface of that I see everything good. So in here we're going to declare two suspend function. On one hand, the get movies, which will take a page as well, and return a list of movie, not movie remote but movie this time. Not all. We need also another suspend function, get single movie. Oops, not the page but the movie ID, and returns just movie. All right. Yeah. Now we need to give an actual implementation of this movie repository. For that, we'll create another repository now inside our data layer here. Inside our data directory, I need to create one more directory that is called repository. So we need to create like an interface here and an actual implementation here, and that way we can also make tests pretty much quick by giving just fake implementation of this repository. So I'll create here repository implementation class. I'll name this movie repository implementation. Yeah, like so. This also will be an internal class. Even this needs to be internal. Internal interface, like so. And this will implement our movie repository actually, and then provide the get movies. Override this get movies. Oh, what's happened? Get movies, yeah, like so. And yeah, this needs, sorry, this actually need an instance of our movie remote data source, private val remote data source. So what's going on? Clashing is now abstract and doesn't not implement abstract. Yeah, we're going. Let me just quickly have the second method over here. So we'll next need from here, since we are not going to implement the cache layer, we'll just need to call our remote data source dot get movies, and then passing the page. What's going on? Yes, we need to map this. Let me first of all, oh, what's going on? Use the result and yeah, and map it to movie like so. I will also need here to call to return first of all remote data source not get single movie, passing in the movie ID as movie ID, and call this to movie, this extension method that we have created so far. I can see that my battery is low. Let me plug in here my power supply. Alright, so next we need to create our use cases. I will come up here where close the data. Inside the domain, I'll create a new directory called use case. And inside this use case directory, I'm going to create a first use case, and that is get movies use case, like so. Should be a class. This is not going to be internal, but it needs to be a coin component. Now I'm using the coin component here, that's way I can directly inject like the view the repository inside this get use cases, because in the iOS side we don't have any way to inject instances. So I'll declare here private val repository. It should be of instance it should be movie repository, and I can use here by inject to get an instance directly here. You need to import that. Right, I would like here to normally override the invoke operator, so I'm going to declare this as suspend operator function invoke, like so. It should pass in a page, and this will return a list of movies. I would like here to keep things simple, and for that I would just return our repository dot get movies, passing in the page as page. Now you need to add this at throw exception. Yeah. Okay, now this throw exception will just tell the Swift file that this invoke method here might throw exceptions. For example, if you don't have internet connection, but since I don't want to go depth inside error handling, I'll just to catch here whatever exception is thrown here through this global exception class. And that's it for this get movies use case. I'm going to create another use case here, and that is a class to get a single movie, get to movie use case. It will be also a coin component. Let me quickly declare my repository as a movie repository by inject. You need to import that, and suspend operator function invoke. This need a movie ID, and this will return a simple movie called a repository dot get movie, passing in the movie ID. Oh, we forgot the return keyword, and also need to have this throws exception class. Alright, so the last thing that we'd like to do in this shared module is to set up our dependency injection. So let me close this. Coming inside our movie package, I'm going to create a new directory called di, and inside that di directory I'm going to create a new Kotlin class file, and we'll name this shared modules. So in here, just to keep things organized, I often decide to create this like per layer module. So first of all, I will declare this private val what am I doing, private val data module for all data related classes. So I need to call the module over here, and then for like, let me show you, inside the remote we would like to provide the remote data source as well as the movie service. Yeah, this one over here. For that, we're going to use the factory method of coin. This factory just will create a new instance each time that we need, like for our remote data source. So since remote data source also need API service as well as the dispatcher, we are going to tell coin that okay, I'll provide you these dependencies as well by calling the get method. We also need So we also need factory for our movie service. This needs no parameter. So we'll need one more here, and that is for the utility module module here, and this is just to get our dispatcher, provide dispatcher, yeah, expect method. That's all for the utility. We'll also need the one for our domain. So in the domain, we like to provide our repository, and we need a single instance for like the whole lifetime of our application. We'd like here to get a single instance of our movie repository, and here I will actually call the implementation movie repository implementation, and then get the remote data source. Let me see if that's all we need to do. Nope, we need also to provide like use cases factory, get movies use case, and here also factory for get single movie use case. I think that's all we need to provide here. Okay, next I would like, let me close this. Next I would like to provide, next I would like to create here a list, private val shared modules, it's a list of all the shared modules, domain module, data module, utility module, and here provide an helper function to get shared modules. This will just return the list that we have created. That way we will call just this function here whenever we want to start our coin. Yeah. So I think this is all for now. This is all for the shared module. Now in the next part we are going to implement the Android UI part. This is a new channel. If you like the video, you can give us that thumbs up, and also don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I'll be posting more educational content, especially about the Kotlin Multiplatform Mobile. If this is a topic that interests you, don't forget to subscribe also, because a second part and a third part are coming as soon as possible. So I'll see you in the next part. For now, take care.